What's up, space pirates? I am the ever-charming dread pirate Dr. Disaster, your captain, and today I am pleased to tell you that we get to say the most satisfying words in the entire English language.
I told you. Yeah. I told you.
Saying "I told you so" is a wonderful thing, but saying it after catching someone in a lie, that is absolutely priceless.
That sounds good. I'll have that.
Prepare your schadenfreude, me hearties, for pleasure overload, because the news that just dropped from this Variety article vindicates what we have suspected all along from the upcoming Indiana Jones 5 film. It is now confirmed by multiple reliable people that the dial of decidedly shitty storytelling underwent reshoots at the end of the film, and to me, at this point, based on comments from Kathleen Kennedy that appeared in this Variety interview, it is now all but confirmed that they had originally planned to make Phoebe Waller-Bridge the star of the show at the end of the film, essentially becoming Indiana Jane. But they had to reshoot it because test audiences didn't like it.
Do people not like me?
We are going to look at the words of both John Williams and Harrison Ford themselves, confirming that reshoots happened, vindicating the long-standing rumors reported on by the likes of Overlord DVD that originally Indiana Jones was going to pass the torch to Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Helena character at the end of the film and become the star of the show. And then we will dig into what Kathleen Kennedy said and bask in that sweet, sweet schadenfreude as we see her plans failing spectacularly as this movie is set to completely bomb at the box office. If I were a Kathleen Kennedy defender, I'd be about ready to abandon ship, because I am finding it harder and harder to believe Disney will ever let her spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a movie ever again after this debacle.
Get the hell out of here!
Alright, let's build our case that the reshoots for the ending of Indiana Jones 5 have been confirmed. The other day, you may remember I covered the fact that the Reddit leaks of the plot of the film, which appeared after the writer claimed to have watched it at the Cannes Film Festival, those leaks were confirmed by YouTube movie critic Chris Gore after he watched the film at the American premiere a few days ago. In case you missed it, this is what he had to say on the subject.
I'm going to give you my broad strokes early impression. And I will tell you this, if you have seen the leaked spoilers, I'll say what they are later, but all the leaks are 100% true. Things occur a little bit differently, but all the leaks are completely accurate.
With that in mind, this here is the Reddit plot leak that appeared last month. I'm not going to read it to you again, but I will give you the brief outline of where it seems very obvious they applied their reshoots, especially in light of new information we're about to cover. The full context is Indiana Jones and his goddaughter Helena put together the Dial of Destiny and traveled back in time to ancient Syracuse. Indiana Jones is a broken man in this film because his son, Mutt, who was introduced in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, was killed in a war, presumably Vietnam. Indy, at the end of the film, refuses to return to his own time period even after Helena suggests that if he stays, he will ruin their timeline. This, of course, breaks the theme of the original films where Indy spends the whole movie pursuing a relic of great power, but at the end of the film, he puts aside his ego and lets it go.
Indiana, let it go.
Nope. Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm had other plans. They decided that Indiana Jones would have to regress. Just like Han Solo becoming a deadbeat dad in The Force Awakens, Indy now can't say no to this artifact. So his goddaughter Helena punches him in the face, knocking him out with one punch, and then presumably dragging him somehow back to 1969. After she punches him, the screen fades to black, and then we see Indy wake up in his bed in New York City, and then he sees his wife Marion, who he was preparing to divorce. We apparently learned earlier in the film. Isn't that just a lovely fate for our favorite hero?
You find more cheer in a graveyard.
The film ends with Indy and Marion having a moment together. So now that we have all that in mind, I submit to you this theory that is now confirmed in my mind. The moment where the screen fades to black is the spot where they added the reshoot, because they have never done anything like a fade to black moment in any Indiana Jones film. It's jarring for me to even think about. It seems completely out of place. The idea that he would suddenly wake up in New York City is completely out of left field. I mean, otherwise, if that was always the original ending, then this was some of the worst screenplay writing I have ever heard of. If that was how they had it planned all along, and it wasn't, make no mistake. But if it was, then they never had a plan on how to visually bring these characters back to 1969, and this was just a lazy way of accomplishing it.
You're a moron!
No, the truth is, they completely redid the ending, and I have the receipts. This next clip here was from several months ago. John Williams, who has no reason to lie to anyone, says they were reshooting the ending.
There are 3 pieces from Indiana Jones 5. I thought we would be finished with Indiana Jones after 4. You know Harrison Ford. You all know who Harrison Ford is. And Harrison is 78 years old, but he's much younger than I am. And I thought, if he can do 5 of them, I have to try to do the 5. So we have just about completed the film. We have maybe another ending shoot and to record maybe in a couple of weeks. And
naturally, after this was made public, this was the response of James Mangold. He disrespectfully said John Williams was mistaken, maybe read Twitter too much. We're not shooting new endings, never did. The film is 99% finished and being rated by the MPAA. This imagined, zany ending with Indy being erased and replaced is a fever dream of wounded folks angry about other films I did not make.
Liar!
Once again, John Williams has no reason to lie. And yes, I know he's an older guy, but he seems very with it. He seems quite spry for his age, and I don't believe he was mistaken at all. I believe he spoke candidly in a moment that he never expected to be filmed and put on social media. And you know who backs me up on this? Harrison Ford himself. Take a look at this clip from the legendary actor who confirms that reshoots did in fact happen.
We did a little work on the ending, which was the last thing that I shot with Karen Allen, who has been a substantial part of the whole thing, but appears in this story only briefly at the end, but with a very strong emotional hook.
Pretty cut and dry. He said they did a reshoot with Marion, who appears briefly at the end of the film. That lines up completely with the plot leaks, and it lines up completely with the theory that the original ending was an entirely insufferable passing of the torch to Phoebe Waller-Bridge, but they changed it to the Marion ending because they knew that people were going to revolt. Of course, little do they seem to realize we were already in open revolt against Lucasfilm. You can change the franchise that you're ruining, you jackasses, but you can't change how we feel about your piss-poor work.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
Alright, so now let's look at this interview with Kathleen Kennedy and James Mangold in Variety. The article headline reads, Indiana Jones 5 director James Mangold on pinch hitting for Spielberg and refusing fan service. Naturally, leading up to the release of this film, this article is meant to be, essentially, advertising for the film, convincing the readers that James Mangold is just the bestest, most humblest guy ever, and that this movie is going to be amazing. But the really interesting part is near the end of the article. We'll read from there. It says, Mangold knew comparisons to Steven Spielberg were inevitable, so he wasn't exactly shocked when the premiere of The Dial of Destiny at the Cannes Film Festival in May drew a muted reaction from critics. When you're in franchise land, it's very hard for critical thinkers, meaning journalists, to overlook what I'm sure their editors want, which is this business prism of how does it rate to the other ones, he says. I always thought if I were second or third best to one of the greatest films of all time, I'd be good. I mean, it all vaporizes later. Either the movie will live or it won't. Wow, that's a lot of cope. He just can't take responsibility for his own shitty movie. Let me dispel this dream for you there, my dude. Your movie will not live. It will die right there in the theater, and it won't even be considered the fourth best indie film, let alone the second or third. But I digress, let's continue. Mangold talks about this with the kind of good-natured forbearance built up over decades in the studio trenches, so I'm surprised by how animated he gets when I bring up the future of Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, Helena Shaw, Indy's goddaughter. Mangold and the Butterworths wrote Helena specifically for Waller-Bridge, seeing in her the same kind of pluck and resourcefulness that made Karen Allen's Marion Ravenwood a perfect foil for Indy in Raiders. Just a quick aside there, they wrote Helena Shaw specifically for Phoebe Waller-Bridge. That sounds an awful lot like that was a command passed down by Kathleen Kennedy. That sounds like she said, look, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is my gal and you're putting her in the movie. So they wrote a character specifically for an actor. I can tell you that that is an awful way to approach writing. You don't write a character for a specific actor. That is ridiculous. But once again, I digress. I ask if he has talked with Disney and Lucasfilm about the potential for Waller-Bridge to carry on the franchise. Mangold smiles and waves his hand dismissively. I'm not interested, he says. I refuse, I just can't do it. He gestures to the rules hovering just over his shoulder. The amount of lore and Easter eggs and fan service starts to become antithetical to any of this stuff at a certain point. It isn't storytelling anymore. It's large-scale advertising. For her part, Kennedy says that while it's entirely possible that a Helena Shaw movie could happen, we're not having any of those conversations right now. We're just focused on finishing this with Harrison. And that's it right there, folks. It's entirely possible that Phoebe Waller-Bridge takes over for Indiana Jones. Entirely possible. With 2 words, Kathleen Kennedy tips her hand. That was her plan all along. She's trying to leave the door open now for a return to the franchise for her strong whammon character into the story. Their original plan got nixed by someone higher up. Now, to Bob Iger's credit, the timeline on these reshoots appear to have happened around December, meaning right after he took over the company again, and I suspect that Bob Iger saw the film and said, hell no. And then they had to do this half-assed ending instead of something more elaborate, something that was better written, because they didn't have much time and they had already spent damn near $300 million on this project already. But however it came to be, almost doesn't matter. Kathleen Kennedy is trying to leave the door open. She's still hoping against hope that this movie will be gangbusters. It will be absolutely amazing in the box office. She's still hoping Iger will crawl back to her and say, "Oh, Kathy, how could I have ever doubted you and your brilliance? Please, let me let you make the new Indiana Jane movies." Well, that ain't gonna happen. But the reshoots did, though. It's confirmed in my mind at this point, and we all need to call out James Mangold for his lying. The worst of it to me is the fact that he threw an innocent guy, John Williams, under the bus while doing so. I mean, if you're gonna lie, then fine, whatever. People in Hollywood lie, it's what they do. Be a liar. But don't drag someone else into your deceitful web. Don't be that kind of a-hole. And if you're Kathleen Kennedy or one of her apologists, let me be the one to break it to you. Phoebe Waller-Bridge ain't happening. You can plan out movies all around this actress, but we reject her entirely. She will not be Indiana Jane. It's entirely impossible. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.